So Bitcoin, I'm gonna get rich flipping vintage Affliction jeans with a dragon embroidered on them. What's up, everybody? I'm Vin McKenty, and this is the Punk Rock MBA. If you grew up listening to Breaking Benjamin, Skillet, and 3 Days Grace in the back of the car while your mom drove you to Costco, and your biggest worry was whether you could pull off that sick combo on SSX Tricky for GameCube, then today I have some very good news for you. Butt rock is back. And what I mean by that is, a couple weeks ago, I talked about this pop punk revival that's happening with people like MGK, Travis Barker, and Mod Sun bringing back that classic Blink-182 kind of sound, but updated with like a modern spin on it. And I think we're kind of on the verge of seeing something like that happen with the 2000s butt rock sound. And if you're asking yourself, wait a minute, are you telling me that Nickelback is about to become the coolest band in the world that every hype new artist cites as an influence? The answer is yes, that is actually exactly what I'm saying. So if you have been sipping a Baja Blast while you curate your best of Shinedown playlist and maybe saving your coolest Affliction shirts from 2005 in hopes that someday this would come, then stay tuned because I think you are gonna like this one. But first, if you haven't, please subscribe and turn on notifications so you get all my videos. And also, I wanted to mention my new merch. And just to be clear, when I say butt rock, what I'm talking about is the bands from the late 90s and early 2000s that kind of picked up where nu metal left off. Breaking Benjamin is kind of the classic example here in that they're not exactly heavy enough to be metal, but they're a little bit too aggressive to be just straight up rock. Basically, what I mean is the kind of bands that get played on your local radio station that says they play nothing but rock. Get it? Like nothing but rock, butt rock? Guess that's where the name comes from. But the big idea there, the important point, is that although those bands sold tens of millions of albums and influenced pretty much every rock artist you can think of in the current generation, it's never been even slightly cool in the eyes of critics and the media. Basically like the redheaded stepchild of the rock scene. Or to be more accurate, the extremely wealthy redheaded stepchild of the rock scene, because these bands make a ton of money, which probably kind of helps take the sting out of it. But because of that just lack of currency among the media and taste-making types, to be honest, I really never thought that I would see any kind of like butt rock revival. But here we are. When you look at what's going on in rock right now, you can just kind of see that the pieces are coming together for what I think might be a butt rock revival. But before I get into exactly what those pieces are, first, I want to thank Cove for sponsoring this video. This is the Cove 179S split speaker, which is perfect for listening to all the songs I mentioned in this video. Because unlike most portable speakers, it actually has a subwoofer. And I was honestly blown away with how good this thing sounds. I'm not just saying that. It legitimately sounds great. It connects via Bluetooth 4.2, so it's easy to pair with your phone or tablet or whatever other device. I set it up with my laptop in literally like 15 seconds. Super easy. And it works up to 32 feet away from your device. And great battery life. It operates up to 7 hours on a single charge. And I really like the design. It's very like sleek and minimal. You can leave it like this, or you can split it up like this if you want like a wider stereo image. Sounds even better that way. And it's also IPX7 water resistant. So if you want to jump in the bubble bath and listen to the new Jeris Johnson song or whatever, you're good to go. And it has a built-in microphone in case you want to record yourself singing along, or I don't know, if you want to take a work call in the bathtub, you can do it. So if you want to check it out, you can get 65% off the Cove 179S split speaker at the link in the description. Just use the coupon code ROCK. And let me just kind of outline what I'm seeing here. The first thing is what I call butt trap, which is my ridiculous name for actually a very cool sound that I'm starting to see more and more of rappers doing something that is very clearly influenced by butt rock. Mario Judah is probably the biggest name here. He had that viral song Die Very Rough that blew up last year on TikTok. Which, as you can tell, is almost like a classic metal kind of vocal over a trap song, almost like Killswitch Engage meets the Migos or something. And that is not a coincidence. Mario's talked a lot in interviews about how he grew up as a butt rock kid.
Shout out Ivan Moody, man. I love you.
Shout out to Adam for trying to get him into Deicide, even though Mario was not at all interested. And he's doing very well for himself. He's currently sitting at about 2 million Spotify listeners. Die Very Rough has about 50 million streams on Spotify alone. And he is getting a lot of attention for himself, not only from that song, but also for his kind of sort of beef with Playboi Carti.
Playboi Carti. Figure it out now and fast!
And rappers being influenced by butt rock is not something that I ever thought I would see happen, but he is not even close to the only one. Like, I was watching the Showtime documentary about Tekashi 6ix9ine the other day, and this part caught my attention.
I didn't like rap. I was always into rock. I grew up on Parkway Drive, All That Remain, Breaking Benjamin, heavy metal. I didn't want to rap.
His biggest influences are Breaking Benjamin, the flagship butt rock band, and a bunch of metalcore bands that, you know, let's be honest, might as well be butt rock. And you may hate 6ix9ine and his music for lots of completely understandable reasons. I mean, he wants you to hate him, but his impact on pop culture can't be denied. He has 11 million Spotify listeners, which for comparison is 4 million more than Slipknot, and all told has several billion streams across all platforms on all his songs. But here's where it gets really interesting to me, and I start to see the same dynamics as the pop punk revival. The driving force behind that whole thing is the older artists like Travis Barker and Avril Lavigne embracing and collaborating with the younger generation, and that is exactly what we're seeing here as well. For example, Linkin Park doing a collab/remix with 100 gecs. That is a cosign and a passing of the torch in exactly the same way as when Travis Barker started working with MGK. I don't personally think the song turned out all that well, but I still think it's cool that they did it, and I love that the Linkin Park guys are plugged in like that. And speaking of collabs, that brings us to my favorite artist doing the butt trap thing, a guy named Jeris Johnson, who's really made his name off that. You may have seen his viral song that blew up on TikTok last year, Damn.
I was like, damn, fucking insane. She was like,
which was his vocals just put over that viral banjo beat that was going around. That quickly blew up, got him several million views in a couple weeks, got him over 1 million on TikTok, and that was the start of everything. And if you look at the comments, you'll see a lot of people said that he kind of sounds like Chad Kroeger in that song, which I think he does, even kind of looks like him a little bit. So people were tweeting about that. So Jeris saw that, reached out to his management, and was actually able to get him to do a feature on a remix of the song, which did a lot for his credibility and got a ton of attention for him because, I mean, it's a fucking Chad Kroeger feature. Like, that doesn't happen. And so this became his playbook. He did a couple other remixes. I wouldn't really call them covers because I think he changes them up and adds a lot more to it that makes it way more than just a cover, with the next big one being Last Resort by Papa Roach. And the same thing happened. It got the attention of Jacoby from Papa Roach, who hit up Jeris and asked him to do a reboot of their song Last Resort as like a celebration of, I guess, the 20th anniversary. And the song did really well. It's currently at 1.8 million views on YouTube and 4 million plays on Spotify in about a month. And although there are some people hating on it, my favorite comment is the one that said he looks like a frat boy had a child with an emo girl, which he actually kind of does. But I think in general, people are stoked on it. But just to be clear, he's not a cover artist or anything like that. I actually like his originals a lot more than his remixes. His song, My Sword, is one of the coolest things I've heard in like years.
open this pit. I see button, I'm singing my shit, checking my fit.
And before I go on, I want to just kind of pause here and point out a couple things. Number one, I think you have to give Jacoby and the Papa Roach guys a lot of credit for staying in touch the way that they do. If you look, there's a reason that they've stayed so relevant over the years as compared to a lot of other bands from their kind of cohort. They've evolved their sound, they don't sound like they're stuck in 2002, and they've played or collaborated with a lot of younger bands. For example, A Day to Remember and Memphis May Fire.
They stabbed me in the back with these scars that made me stronger.
And number two, the fact that they trusted Jeris to help them reboot that song says a lot about how fucking good he is. He's not like your average TikTok FL Studio kid. He is a super talented musician who can play every instrument better than, I would say, probably 90% of people in bands. But that is not all. Like I said, this is Jeris's playbook, and he just did it again. On the back of these remixes, he got on Bring Me the Horizon's radar, Ollie Sykes reached out to him, and he just dropped an official remix of Can You Feel My Heart, which really kind of brings this whole thing full circle. Now you've kind of got 3 generations of artists in rock collaborating to do like fresh, cool, new, innovative shit that draws from the past, but also brings things into the future. And I love to see this. You've got the old guard in Linkin Park, Nickelback, and Papa Roach. You've got the fresh new faces like Mario Judah, 100 gecs, and Jeris Johnson. And then in the middle, you've got Bring the Horizon. And the reason why that makes me so hopeful, aside from just like the cool creative stuff happening, is that this is the same dynamic we see in the pop punk revival, with Travis and Avril as the old guard, Mod Sun and MGK MGK kind of in the middle, and then newer artists like Jaden, Kenny Hoopla, and Ian Dior as the fresh-faced newcomers. All doing that same kind of crossover where the newer artists are taking what the older artists did, but updating it with kind of that rap influence that makes it sound current and fresh. And trust me, I am as surprised as you are. I never thought Nickelback rap would be a thing, but here we are. After 2020, I give up. Anything could happen. I will never be surprised again.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
And to be clear, unlike the pop punk revival, which is very clearly like in full swing, there's several #1 albums and singles that are part of that. This butt rock revival, if it is that, is still a lot newer, so you're not going to see the same kind of big numbers yet. But I think we can say that something is definitely happening. The butt trap thing is what I'm personally most excited about, but we should also talk about metalcore, which is kind of the other side of this. And basically what I see there is that the influence of 2000s butt rock and metalcore shows no signs of slowing down. Architects would be the flagship band here, who have been heading in this direction for a while, but their new album, For Those That Wish to Exist, it's definitely their most quote-unquote accessible release yet. And when metalcore bands say accessible, you know what that means, butt rock. But in all seriousness, I'm not hating on this at all. I've mentioned before that I'm not personally a fan of this stuff, but it's clearly connecting with their audience, and I can totally respect that. Architects are at 2 million Spotify listeners now, and kind of the next tier down of bands like Fit for a King and Wage War are sitting kind of close to the 1 million mark, which is awesome for metalcore. Also, breaking news on the metalcore front. I don't love this song because it is a little bit on the butt rock side of things, but I'm very happy to see that apparently Grassy Field videos are back. So this stuff may not be for me, but it is finding an audience, and again, I can respect that.
That's the story of my life. No respect. I don't get no respect at all. You have no respect at all.
So that's kind of an overview of what is happening, but let's also talk about why, because I think that's really what's interesting here and what can kind of give us an idea of where this might be headed. First of all, I think part of this is just time. Like butt rock is about to turn 20 years old, which tends to be roughly how long it takes for something to get a revival. There's a model that people use in tech called the Gartner hype cycle, and I think it largely applies to music and pop culture as well. So you've got hype on this axis and time on this axis. And the first point of interest is here. This is the point of maximum hype, where this is like the cool, hot new trend that everybody is chasing. And then, of course, inevitably, it gets oversaturated, becomes played out and corny. Nobody wants anything to do with it, and it falls off a cliff and becomes just radioactive for a few years. Like if you were still playing nu metal in 2006. But after a while, the stink kind of wears off, and there's enough distance from all those traumatic memories of it being like a cringy middle school phase that people are like, you know what, that stuff was popular for a reason, and actually it was pretty good, and I'm not embarrassed to like it anymore. Which brings us to this point, the revival, which is I think exactly where we're at with 2000s pop punk. It's been acceptable to like that stuff for a couple years now, and I think we're kind of starting to get there with butt rock too. For example, Vice doing this very flattering, very well done video about the story behind Papa Roach and Last Resort. I would say that Vice is a pretty good proxy for what people with quote unquote good taste think, and as you can see from the fact that they made this video, they officially think Papa Roach is good now. And the same is true on the artist side as well, I think. I mean, you're not gonna find a metalcore band that doesn't love Breaking Benjamin, right? And I think you can see this as part of the larger 2000s revival trend that we're seeing across the board. For example, there's something called the Y2K aesthetic that all the TikTok Zoomers are into, which from what I can tell basically means dressing like you're in a Destiny's Child photo shoot, or maybe a teen movie starring Julia Stiles, or like you're the main character in Space Channel 5 for Dreamcast. And that's not directly relevant to butt rock per se, but I do think it shows that we're just kind of generally warming up to and getting nostalgic for that period and all the things that come along with it, from one-armed shirts to GameCube to Papa Roach. And as I have talked about many times, you guys know that I love that Red State Butt Rock Festival look. I am excited to see people selling Ed Hardy, Affliction, and Smet stuff on Depop for way too much money. I'm telling you, this shit is gonna be cool again very soon. So get your bedazzled jeans now while you can still afford them. You're laughing, but check back in a year. I'm gonna be right. So fuck Bitcoin, I'm gonna get rich flipping vintage Affliction jeans with a dragon embroidered on them. I think there's also some overlap here with Hyperpop, which I would say is probably the most interesting creative kind of alternative music happening right now. If you're not familiar with the genre, I'm gonna do a whole video about it soon, but basically, hyperpop is artists like 100 gecs, Dorian Electra, and Sophie, RIP, doing something that I would describe as like a semi-ironic, glitched out version of 2000s pop.
I'm on a sugar crash, I ain't gonna fucking cash. Maybe I should take a bath, come on fucking brain a half.
Like if Britney Spears went to art school, maybe. Musically, this stuff may not sound like butt rock at first glance, but I could definitely see it happening. In fact, I would say it's almost inevitable that it's gonna happen, especially listening to stuff like this.
What you do at night? I just don't bring it on to the daylight.
Just imagine throwing a couple Breaking Benjamin riffs in there, and that is exactly what I'm talking about. Somebody is gonna do it, if they haven't already. And as I said before, on the metalcore side of things, I think that stuff is only gonna go more and more butt rock as time goes on. And so the big question is, where is all this headed? Is this just gonna be an underground thing, or are we gonna see butt rock back at the top of the charts again, like we did in 2003? Well, I think it's kind of the same thing as what's happening with the pop punk revival. I think this is gonna continue to happen on the underground level, regardless. But whether it gets bigger than that depends on whether we have a breakout star with a breakout hit that really puts this new sound on the map in the same way as Lil Peep did for emo rap. I love what Mario Judah and Jeris Johnson are doing, and if the stars aligned, I could see either one of them being that person, or maybe someone else could come along. I don't know. But either way, what I really love to see here is this like cross-generational collaboration that's happening right now in rock, with the older artists in pop punk and butt rock supporting the younger generation, and both of them kind of vibing off each other in a way that is just super cool and refreshing to me. And it's just super cool to see people like Travis Barker, Linkin Park, and Papa Roach getting stoked on them and supporting the new generation in a way that can really just only benefit everybody. The newer artists get a little bit of a boost to their career by getting the cosign from the older generation, and the older generation of artists gets exposure to the new fans, and everybody wins, right? Like, that is how it's supposed to work. So I'm super excited to see all this stuff happening. As far as where it's gonna go from here, I think it's a little bit too early for me to make any kind of like strong predictions, but I love what I'm seeing, and I'm stoked to see where it goes. And if you are as stoked as I am, all I ask is please help me make butt trap a thing, because that is definitely the best fake genre name I have ever come up with. All right, my friends, that does it for this video. As always, I would love to know what you think in the comments. Where do you see this headed? What are the other artists doing this that I should know about? Let me know what you think in the comments. But before I let you go, I wanted to mention a couple things. Number one, I wanted to give a shout out to the legend Eddie Leeway, who unfortunately is battling cancer. He has a GoFundMe. If you would like to donate to give him a little bit of a helping hand, there's a link to that in the description. Number two, please check out the Punk Rock NBA podcast if you haven't. There's also a link to that in the description. And number three, as always, I would like to thank everybody who supports us on Patreon, especially those who support at the True Cult level or above. It is because of their support that I'm able to do the podcast as well as some other things. I actually lose a lot of money on the podcast, so it's because of your support that I'm able to pay the producer and editor who makes the whole thing happen, and I am extremely grateful for your support. Patrons get every podcast a week early. There's a members-only private Discord server that I'm in all the time. I do patron-only Q&As. There's a way to have me review your music or video or podcast or artwork or anything else that you might want to get my eyes and ears on. So if that sounds cool to you, you can check out the Patreon at the link in the description. And with that, I'm going to sign off for now, but I will see you next time.